Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are and joining us today. We have an amazing panel today. Slowly then suddenly transforming the enterprise. We're going to be talking about the rapid increase in adoption of digital ledger technology, of blockchains, of distributed and decentralized architecture around the world. We have an amazing panel with us today. My name is David Nage. I am a managing director of Arca. We are one of the largest institutional asset managers of digital assets in the world. And I am also the host of Base Layer, a podcast that has been running now for over 2.5 years that has featured some of the now most prolific founders in digital assets, such as Sergey Nazarov from Chainlink and others. And so with that, we're going to keep my introduction short because, again, we have an amazing panel here of people in the space, and I want them to tell you about what they're doing and where they're coming from. And then we're going to talk a little bit about this transformation period. So with that, I'm going to bring it to John Wolpert from ConsenSys.
Oh, hi. It's good to see you, David. Good to see everybody, Yorke and the whole gang. Yeah, I'm John Wolpert. I was one of the founders of Hyperledger and worked over at IBM, and then saw the light that shared databases were a good idea for things, but I was more interested in more public blockchain and what it could do for enterprise. I would call this not enterprise blockchain, but blockchain in the enterprise. How do we use it in a safe, effective manner? And that led to the baseline protocol, which I'm the current TSC technical steering chair of. And in that capacity, we're building not a chain, not a token, not a coin, not a scheme, not a product, but a standard, a technique, a design pattern that will be now going to promulgation in the new year and to ISO, hopefully, where we can use public blockchain in a way that is safe and effective, where you don't put any data on any kind of blockchain, but you use it for digital integration. We can talk about that more later.
Thank you for that, John. We'll go to Yorke from Microsoft.
Hey, can everybody hear me okay?
Yes, we do.
Awesome. Great to see everyone. Always great to be back with my collaborator, John, for our sparring sessions about design patterns. I was happy you used that terminology, John. So Yorke Rhodes from Microsoft. In 2015, I co-founded our blockchain work at Microsoft. And we've been on a journey through partner relationships, portfolio development of different types of tooling, whether it's developer tooling and collaborations very significantly with the open source community in all the work that we're doing. And then relevant services that we've established during the course of what I would call the very vibrant POC stage of enterprises learning about this technology. And then I think where we are today is a really interesting inflection point and tipping point based on what's going on. So I think that's the exciting vision that most people, including myself, had when we got into blockchain was how do you have a decentralized system of trust, and how do you maintain that, and what is the actually end state of that? And from my perspective, what journey allows an enterprise to get there, right? And so having been around sort of through the internet transformation, that's sort of the pattern that I followed. Like, how did enterprise get involved in the internet in a safe way? So anyway, my work today, actually, I sit currently, my day job is in a $60 billion revenue line at Microsoft. It's the cloud revenue. And early in my work in blockchain, realized that supply chains were a very interesting pattern that could be solved by this decentralized technology. So I've had the opportunity for the last 3.5 years to actually steward this project, and a year ago, actually moved full-time into the cloud hardware supply chain of the $60 billion revenue line at Microsoft. And so we actually have planted blockchain technology and techniques in our supplier base to actually power the work that we do in the cloud. So it's a pretty interesting opportunity, which was hard to pass up from that perspective. And from a successes perspective, we've actually gotten a supply chain breakthrough of the year for this blockchain-based project from Gartner. So, from a blockchain guy, getting Gartner to acknowledge that was actually quite a good achievement that I didn't realize I was going to have this year. So,
awesome.
All right, so I'll pass it on.
Very good, thank you, Yorke. Moving over to Andreas Dittrich from Deutsche Telekom.
Hi, everyone, and greetings from Berlin. It's already afternoon here, and I see it's a little earlier in California. So good morning, everyone. I'm head of Blockchain Solution Center at Deutsche Telekom. We're the biggest telco provider in Europe, and you might know us also from T-Mobile US, obviously, which is a subsidiary of Deutsche Telekom. And I'm heading the unit that takes care of blockchain activities in Deutsche Telekom. There are many different islands, but we are the center of gravity. And we've seen an incredible transformation. We do exist since 5 years, started with enterprise use cases. But roughly 3 years ago, we really started transforming ourselves to focusing almost exclusively on public blockchains, because we believe that value is being digitized and digital value needs to be managed. And the layer for that is going to be, in most cases, will be public blockchains. So our duty as a telco is to support those networks, right? We put telephone lines so people can exchange thoughts. We are running servers and backbone of the internet so that we can exchange data at scale. And next thing is exchanging value at scale. And that's what we're going to support. This journey has started roughly 3 years ago, and I'm pretty happy that we reached important milestones already last year. For example, we are live on Chainlink since more than a year by now, going live right in DeFi summer. What a ride, and I'm happy to be part of that ride.
Excellent, thank you, Andres. Next to Aetienne Sardon from Swisscom.
Yes, so hi all, my name is Etienne. I'm an innovation manager at Swisscom's FinTech unit, where we're responsible for developing new business opportunities in the area of digital assets. So also very excited to be part of this panel, and we'd also like to actually use this opportunity to make a short announcement. So we're very excited to announce that Swisscom has joined the Chainlink network. So as we're speaking, Swisscom has now also an active Oracle node, and we're already contributing price data for the US dollar pair right now. And we're still in the beginning of our Chainlink and DeFi journey, but we do see this as an important step in moving Swisscom towards a more decentralized and open financial market infrastructure. And we're very excited to be part of this transformation, as we see a lot of great innovation potential really unfolding in this space right now. And this is really something we greatly care about at Swisscom, because we're not only a telco provider, but in fact, we're also one of the largest IT service providers for the financial service industry in Switzerland. And in this role, we want to enable the development for better financial services. And we believe that with the help of innovative projects and partners like Chainlink, we can really position Swisscom to be part of this new decentralized financial system that is emerging right now. So very excited to be part of the Chainlink family, and very much looking forward to the journey ahead of us.
You heard it here first. I love it as a podcaster when I get to break news, and you're hearing it now where there is a breaking news. Thank you for that, Etienne. Appreciate that. If we could potentially jump into the subject at hand, that is what we're defining as slowly then suddenly transforming the enterprise, as I alluded to. This is actually very true, that over the last few years, and you've heard from Yorke and John and others, that they have been cognizant in understanding of digital asset infrastructure, of distributed and decentralized architecture for a number of years. But that has taken some time to get to a point of inflection where corporations, enterprises, global conglomerates are using it. And so I'd like to get a sense from John, we'll start with you if that's possible, because I know ConsenSys works with a lot of corporations out there in the globe. Why do you think it's happening at an accelerated pace now? And would you agree with me that it is actually happening at an accelerated pace now versus the last few years? What is the reason why it's happening today versus the last few years? And then we'll move over to the other panelists.
I'm trying to, folks have heard me talk about, shared databases, and that's, I do think that some things don't go the way the internet. Somebody was trying to convince me the other day that, you know, NFTs the way they are today. You know, I was expressing some skepticism about certain kinds of NFTs, and they said yes, but nobody believed the internet was going to be this thing, and I'm like, you can't use that argument all the time. It doesn't actually. I can point to countless, you know, technologies that did not go that way. And I think it really comes down to mental models, right? So I think as technologists, we've all agreed, and I'm sure Yorke and I would agree with this, that the technological set of capabilities that have been assembled into what we generally call blockchain has importance. Yorke, I'm guessing you're going to nod on that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right, but the mental models around that have evolved, and maybe this is why it's slowly then subtly, because suddenly, you know, we kind of go from one not going to work idea to another one, not in terms of the technology itself, but, you know, it's like, hey, I've got a hammer. Let's try to glaze glass with that. That's a terrible idea. That doesn't work, right? So, you know, let's. I can use it to pound nails. That's a more useful use for it. I think. Anytime you hear people talking about blockchain as a database, even sort of in an inferred way, right? Like I'm going to put data on it. In a corporate environment, company environment, even small companies today, as they grow and get into regulation and importance and grandma's pension and all those things, they're going to wake up one day and realize that putting their internal data on a digital nudist colony, even a private one, it's just a digital nudist beach on a private beach, right? Is probably a terrible idea. It's a gigantic threat surface. So we've seen all these proof of concept projects working that most of the time, they may call themselves in production, but there's a CISO in there somewhere that's going to put the kibosh on it and say, no, wait a minute, are you crazy? Don't do that, right? So you can get a certain distance on that. And I was part of that wave. I thought of it as a database in 2015. Mark Andreessen thought we were dumb. And we used to call this the Andreessen's revenge, right? That I was like, Mark Andreessen's smarter than me. What does he know that I don't? And then, you know, a couple of years later, I'm like, oh yeah, he was smarter than me. I didn't have the right idea. It's not a good database. It is possibly good middleware. An always-on tamper-resistant state machine that resists people taking it over, locking you out of valid transactions is a powerful thing. It does not scale. A singleton can never scale to be the back end of everybody's application all the time, everywhere. Dfinity, you'll see, you know, is a bunch of subnets. It's competing against a cloud. It's not a blockchain. It might have some blockchain sauce in it, but it's not a blockchain. So I think a singleton cannot scale, even without consensus layer, cannot scale to be everybody's backend. It's not a world computer. It might be the internet's state machine for hash management and ordering. It could probably scale to do that. And that would be an extraordinarily valuable thing, because that way we don't have to spend capital expense setting up integration buses over and over and over again and paying IBM $1 million a year to do it or whatever. And so that would be a nice addition to the internet. And it's really boring, but extraordinarily powerful. So I think when things get boring, things get faster in corporate use of things like this.
Yorke, to you.
Yeah, and I think that's a really, really good jumping off point, because like innovators sometimes can feel the boring encroaching on what they're innovating on and start to get bored, right? Because they're like, this is becoming very mainstream. And I certainly have those hairs that stand up on the back of my neck when I get there. And I have to just remind myself, you know, in this category, we're very early and there's a ton of work to do. But I think, you know, just taking a slightly different approach, to me, I think the big things that have really driven the speed of recognition of the value from a, you know, non-participants perspective is really twofold. One is the unicorns that have happened, you know, like the IPOs, for example, Coinbase, that always wakes up some investors. You know, you can see the $2.2 billion Andreessen Horowitz A16Z fund, right? That's a pretty big statement in the market. So I think the realization in the financial, you know, sort of markets is one. Secondly, the realization that DeFi is a new fintech, I think is a very high percentage of that market. And that's also a big recognition. And then the other main thing that I think has really driven this is like, you know, those typical tipping point things you just don't realize they come out of nowhere, like NFTs, right? That have been around for a while, right? And Pattern certainly has been around for a while. But just they got this zeitgeist moment, right? Where all of a sudden, there was a ton of interest coming from non-blockchain protocol people, right, into the value proposition of an NFT, right, for creators and consumers alike. And those two areas, you know, NFTs to me represent essentially the new digital e-commerce realm. You know, the other is obviously all in the finance and the fintech space. And I think when you hit on a consumer meme and on a fintech unicorn revolution, that drives a lot of people to act. So I think that's what's going on from my perspective.
Thank you for that, Yorke. Andres, I want you to address the same question, but I'm going to add an extra piece there because I heard you in your introduction speak more specifically about public chains. And so there has been for years a debate, especially in corporate worlds and corporate circles. Could we actually use public chains, or do we need to use private blockchains that protect data? So why, again, do you think we are seeing accelerated growth of interest? And then why specifically did you hit on that public chain aspect?
I'm not making the argument that John made already again, which is look at the 90s. And we've had this before with the internet. I truly believe that there will be niche applications for enterprise or permissioned blockchains, but the real power lies in public decentralization and tokenization. Right, so that's where the bulk of the value will be managed, and that's public blockchains. And by the way, I have two timers here, and one just went off 9 minutes ago. London upgrade on Ethereum, EIP 1559 going live. That's what's happening outside, and that's just one news. I mean, that's big news now, but those news are on a weekly basis. We have insane announcements. And going back to your original questions, slowly then suddenly, well, it's about time, enterprises, right? Get on track already, because startups are taking up the space. And if you don't move, you will be out. And that's what you see in different industries, but especially the financial industry is really being disrupted. So it's about time. And it's about time for another reason. For now, there's a lot of regulatory legal gray zone when providing services on top of public blockchains, obviously, or on top of any blockchain, to be honest, right? And this risk at the moment is being handled by startups only, right? Mostly, at least. And they can't really do anything about it. They're just having the risk. They don't have the power that enterprises like Deutsche Telekom, Microsoft, you name it, have to do lobbying, to force better regulation, to make this a viable place to do business as well, right? So slowly but suddenly, I think we've been waiting too long. We've been focusing on, allow me to say that, bad use cases, bad blockchain use cases for way too long in the traditional industry, basically trying to do our business models just somehow with blockchain in the name without changing anything. That didn't work, and we've been left behind in a sense. And this is the chilly wind that we really felt 3 years ago, when we felt we're doing the wrong thing. This train is leaving without us if we don't transform quickly. And that's where you get the speed, right? Once you've understood that, you get a sense of urgency. You don't only need to act, you want to act because of all those exciting opportunities. Think of Q1, Ethereum again, we'll have the merge to proof of stake. And that's just Ethereum. That's the biggest news on Ethereum. I could tell you dozens more, right? So that's what's happening, and let's do it.
Thank you for that, Andres, and congratulations to the Ethereum team with the release of EIP 1559. It is a hallmark moment for them, and something that for all of us that are on the inside have been watching, and congratulations on the work with that launch that is coming just shortly here. Etienne, question to you again, slowly then suddenly. Why do you think we are progressing at an accelerated pace of adoption today versus the last few years?
Yeah, so maybe also to turn around the question a bit, also what has been blocking adoption a lot. I think really, I mean, and some points already have been mentioned before. I think really the biggest challenge really has been that with a lot of these decentralized systems like Chainlink and also DeFi, they don't easily fit into existing mental models of an incumbent or enterprise because they just so radically differ from its core business. So I think really incumbents are challenged to rethink their notion of value chains, business models, value capturing, and so on in the context of a more decentralized world. And the problem really is that incumbents, they tend to want to have full control and ownership of systems or businesses they operate in. And I mean, for obvious reasons, that's just not possible in a decentralized world. And I think while incumbents acknowledge or have acknowledged that DLT is quite a powerful technology, they're like still struggling to find their spot in public and open blockchains. And I would say this is actually the perfect example of the innovator's dilemma described by Clayton Christensen, where he says that the attributes that make disruptive technologies unattractive in established markets are often the ones that have the greatest value in emerging markets. So a key takeaway from this is really to develop new technologies with the right customers, not necessarily the existing ones. And now looking also at DeFi, I think it's becoming quite clear that there's like a real market with a growing customer base that is starting to be delivered financial services in a radically new way. And we can see this is really also taking off in objectively measurable ways, just looking at, let's say, lending protocols like Aave and so on, where you can really see substantial growth in the total value locked in these protocols. And I mean, what's really fascinating about this is that a lot of these DeFi platforms are essentially doing what open banking always wanted to. So they turned the open banking idea into reality, but a lot faster and also without requiring regulators to drive this change. So I think enterprises are seeing the impact that these projects can have. And I think that's kind of the accelerator or the catalyst for the tipping point.
Thank you for that. And so I want to jump to thematics and narratives that are becoming more and more important in the industry and the asset class that has evolved over the last few years. And I think, as Andreas said, alluded to this, back around 2016 and 17, you had founders who wanted to just create replacements to pre-existing architecture and systems, to social media apps, and to lots of different things that we use on a daily basis. And then we started to see this new evolution of DeFi, roughly about 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, that was effectively creating a new financial system. We then saw the rise of NFTs. However, for those that are familiar, NFTs were around in 2017 with CryptoKitties. And as John probably knows very intimately, the effect of CryptoKitties on the Ethereum ecosystem at the moment in time. We've also seen Ashton Kutcher's new CryptoKitty kind of emulation, his NFT out there, also doing very similar things the last week or two. I'm curious from the panelists, what narratives, what trends, what aspects of this new industry are you really locked into right now for the current, the present, but also for the next 6 to 12 months? And Yorke, with your permission, I'd like to start with you.
Yorke might have froze.
Is frozen.
I think you broke up a little
the
bit.
question was so mind-blowing that we froze.
He looks happy.
I was gonna impersonate Yorke and give you his answer, but no, okay.
I believe Yorke is back with us. Yorke.
Oh, wait. Were you asking me a question? I'm back. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Again, to address what themes, what narratives, what trends, such as DeFi, such as NFTs, what specific trends and narratives are you currently focusing on today, and that you believe will be impactful for the next 12 to 18 to 24 months?
So I actually think, the sort of realization of what NFTs are is just starting to dawn on people. And so, sort of in some sense, that technology is going to drive a whole nother wave of innovators into the space, whether or not they are actually keeping the promise of what NFTs are, supposed to do from a consumer and creator value proposition perspective. There are folks running around in the NFT space, particularly in the blockchain gaming space, basically trying to recreate their favorite startup, right? And saying that it's an NFT, and that they've solved all the world's problems with blockchains, and that they're doing it better, and it doesn't have to be decentralized, right? That to me is a risk, right? But I do think that this particular space, in addition to the DeFi space, but I think outside of the DeFi space, NFTs just represent a pure digital e-commerce opportunity. And you can just see that across many different layers, including recognition from Toby Ludicky of Shopify that he should actually have capability in his marketplaces to represent NFTs natively.
I will kick it to John for a second, but I will say that the play to earn models that we're seeing with Axie and with the support of startups like YGG, I think are revolutionary. I think are going to change the landscape of a 3 billion gamer population around the world. So I do think that that's something that we are going to watch happen today. We are watching happening today, and we will see in the future. John, you had something that you wanted to say?
Yeah, I think that it's important. I was setting up a punchline earlier, right? I was like, hey, blockchain's boring, but the answer that if used properly is not boring. And NFTs are not useless, but putting raw in the clear or even encrypted data in a blockchain for commercial or company. I mean, imagine if you were a hedge fund and you went into something, and it's pretty hard to keep that from another hedge fund, another competitor, if you do it in the wrong way. So I think Paul Brody and I came to an accord about this. Tokens are good, but in a company's perspective, you need to keep the data in that token to effectively a pointer or a hash or something, and that's very valuable. What you don't want to do, so you can use tokens and you can get exposed to DeFi. And in fact, that's the work that we're doing right now, is to say, hey, you know what, if you baseline protocol your invoices, we will buy them from you for a really low rate because we think that they're more likely to get paid, because you have assured consistency between your somebody's accounts receivable system and somebody's account payable system. Don't put the invoice on the blockchain. But you can roll them up into tokens and do DeFi from there.
Right. Well, luckily we have the advent of zero knowledge proofs and some other aspects of privacy sharing L2s that are out there that are starting to facilitate that, making it easier. Andres, again, trends and narratives. We have about another minute or so, and then we'll go to Etienne. So trends and narratives you are watching for the next 6 to 12 to 18 months.
Very quickly, basically what we're doing, I think, is a model for other companies as well, running infrastructure for blockchain networks, public blockchain networks specifically. And this is kind of funny because we're doing a traditional IT service running a node securely, but in fact, we're providing financial services. So we're transforming us while we're running such services that we used to do for decades. And we won't remain the only ones. It's important that others jump on board, because this means we will make the basis for all the applications on top of those networks more attractive, more stable, and so on. This goes in parallel with more investments coming from big corporations. I would expect both on infrastructure investment side, a lot more activity. Again, just to make those a better basis for decentralized applications. I'm not the guy to tell you which is the killer application in 3 years. I'm not that visionary. I can tell you what we're focusing on, and when it comes to use cases, and this is mainly around the topic of digital sovereignty. I don't want to have a login with Google button, login with Microsoft button. Sorry, Yorke. I want to log in on my own behalf with my own credentials and have full control over it. And the German
Andreas,
government,
by the way, we agree with you on that. That's why we've spent so much time in decentralized identities.
Exactly. And in European...
Yes, just quickly wrap up, and I need to get to Etienne very quickly.
Quickly wrapping up, this is heavily pushed also by the European government, which is great to see that public players are asking for DLT-based solutions to handle identity management.
Very good. Etienne, very quickly, your thoughts?
Sure. So yeah, I think actually not so much a new narrative, but a revived one probably. I think the whole topic around self-custody is very, very important. And I think it's also now very crucial in the context of DeFi because it's really the gateway to DeFi. And I think we can see this very interestingly with also companies like Ledger, where you have really a growing user base, and also Square now considering hardware wallets and moving into that space. And I think just making hardware wallets or self-custody more fashionable will just be a huge game changer. And maybe also as a closing remark from my side, also what you guys mentioned, John and David, in terms of privacy preserving features, I think that's a super relevant area as well. I think networks like Oasis, Vala, or Secret are on a very important mission. And I think it's still one of the biggest hurdles for public blockchains, and also especially for DeFi, making markets more fair and to kind of counter combat things like front running. All of these things are actually very unique features that privacy preserving systems can bring to the table, and I'm very excited about that.
Excellent. Thank you for that. And thank you all for participating. Great panel. Obviously, we could talk for hours, and maybe we will one day again. Thank you all for joining us this morning or the afternoon or evening where you are in the world. And I'll kick it back to Andy and the team there.
Thank you so much, David, and to all the panelists. What an illuminating conversation. Fantastic guests and so much information. Don't let the Etienne's Swisscom announcement get buried. Chainlink community, go look up Swisscom and find out what they do and how they do it as a telecom provider, as an IT service provider to the financial industry. Huge news, and I'm very, very excited about that. Thank you for bringing that to us today, Etienne. And also the London upgrade has gone live. So congratulations to the Ethereum community. The blocks are populating with the new London upgrade. So that's good news. We're going to keep an eye on Ethereum throughout the day. I'll try to keep an eye on the news and let you guys know, although you're probably all over the internet as well, but I'll do my best.